And welcome to the APA 7th edition Basics webinar. My name is Suzanne Schrieffer, and I'm the librarian for education and general education. And I will let Sarah introduce herself quickly.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Philbrandt, and I am the Digital Services Librarian for Rasmussen University.
Great. Well, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to turn my video off. You don't have to look at me, so that way we can focus on the slides. So, first of all, before we get going, I just want to gauge your comfort level with APA. So please take a moment and put your response in the chat. What is your comfort level with the APA citation style? Very comfortable, somewhat comfortable, not comfortable, or I haven't tried it yet. Oh, good. Barbara's feeling comfortable. That's awesome. And Jacqueline, great. You're not comfortable yet? That's okay. You came to the right place. Jamie, likewise, good for you. Anybody hasn't tried it yet? I know it seems like it doesn't take long before an APA assignment pops up in a course if this is your first term with Rasmussen. Okay, well, good. So hopefully you'll all learn a few things in this next 30 minutes. So what are we going to cover today? Well, first of all, we're going to describe what the APA 7th edition citation style is, why we use APA, and then really today we're going to focus on sort of the mechanics of APA. APA is a lot bigger than this, but we're really going to focus on formatting an APA paper. And then we're going to talk about the different types of citations that are used in papers. In-text citations, those are the little notations that are put in the text of your paper. And then we're going to sort of look at the references list, which is where you list all the resources you used in your paper. And then we'll finish up with where we can find help. So first of all, what is APA? Well, APA actually
Oh, Suzanne, we lost your audio there.
and they also have very specific rules about how you cite sources in the body of your paper and in the references list. So why does Rasmussen use APA? Well, first of all, any citation style is a standard. And this particular citation style, as I mentioned before, is very widely used. And citation styles have rules that make papers consistent. Also, they foster clear and neat formats. And if you know the APA citation style, you will probably read articles that use a citation style similar to APA or perhaps the APA style itself, so you know what some of the notations mean. We also use it because it's used in your field of study. APA is predominantly used in the health sciences and social sciences, and many of our programs fall within that category. Also, it requires that you document your research, and that's important because whenever you're trying to make a point, it adds to your credibility if you can point to an expert who supports your point in the course of your paper. So it gives you credibility, gives your argument some oomph, if you will. And then also, of course, we always want to avoid plagiarism. We want to remain honest in our writing. So the APA citation style also encourages you to give credit to those experts that you refer to or use in your academic writing. So when are citations needed? Well, there are certain types of resources and situations where you need to cite material. So whenever information is paraphrased, that means when you take information from a source, but you restate that in your quote unquote own words. Use your own voice to express what the original message states. When you summarize source material, that means, giving the main facts in a condensed form. If you quote material, meaning that you take information word for word from a document, you must cite that. Images. A lot of students forget that if they take an image from a resource they're using, or they find an image online, or they include a table or a graphic from a source, those visual pieces have to be cited as well. And then finally, statistics, numbers, data that you use in your paper, those have to be cited as well. And actually, there are two places that you cite, as I mentioned before. You cite that source material in the text of the paper, and then you also include a full reference in your references list that appears at the end of the paper. Okay, so let's talk about formatting. So first of all, there are 6 approved fonts that you can use according to the 7th edition of APA. You can use Calibri 11, Arial 11, or Lucida Sans Unicode 10 point. Um, Calibri 11 is the default font size or font in Word, so I think that's probably one of the more popular um, fonts to use. You can also use Times New Roman 11 point, Georgia 11 point, or Computer Modern 10 point. Times New Roman was the 6th edition, the only font accepted in the 6th edition. So we think it's kind of nice that Calibri is also accepted now because that's the default in Word. The entire paper is double spaced. They're also 1-inch margins. The nice thing about Microsoft Word is 1-inch margins are the standard, so you don't have to do anything with your document to change those margins. So let's take a look at the title page. So every APA paper begins with the title page, and this image is a little bit small, but it includes in the top half of your paper, it includes the title, which is centered and bolded. Then there's a blank space, and notice this is all double spaced. Then you type your name, you type your institution, so we would type Rasmussen University. You would type um, the course code and the name of the course, so ENC 1100 colon English composition, something like that. You would include your instructor's name and then the date that you're submitting the assignment or when your assignment is due. So that all appears centered at the top of the page or top half of the page. Also notice that there is a page number included on the cover page. So that is the first page of your paper. So the number 1 appears in the top right corner. So I just want to point out now, because you're thinking, oh, how can I remember all of this? We have a wonderful guide called the APA Guide. There's a link to that at the top of this slide. But if you're unfamiliar with APA or just learning it, I encourage you to take a quick look at the APA Quick Start Toolkit, which is right there front and center on the landing page. There you will find a sample paper. It is actually an APA style paper written about APA that our library team developed, and it'll give you an example of what an APA paper looks like. We tried to integrate every type of citation in that paper, and as well as the references list, so you can get an idea of what an APA paper looks like and use it as a model. More importantly, probably the most popular thing here is there is a pre-formatted Word document. We call it the APA paper template. You can download that, and it already has the margins, the line spacing, and all that pre-formatted, but you can use that for all of your papers. It also has that cover page set up, so you just have to put your own information in there. There's an APA paper checklist that you can use to make sure you've done everything compliantly before you turn your paper in. And there's just a lot more there, but I'll leave that to Sarah to show a little bit later. So let's walk through a typical assignment. Now it looks like there's a question here. There's a hand up. Do you have a question, Chang Tao?
Yeah, yes, I do. Just a quick question before you move forward, since we were talking about like the example paper, the APA example that you guys have in the library.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a quick question. I've used it before, but somehow the reference page always ends up being weird when I, submit my paper. And I've gotten points docked off because they're like, okay, you did the reference page correctly because, the word reference was on like my previous page. But I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah, because
well,
it's got to be centered in the top of the, because it's its own page. Tell you what, we have some great tools that you can use to help with that reference page that we will mention at the end.
okay,
So
that sounds great.
there's
Because I'm
one
like, okay,
called,
I'm using the
yeah,
example template, but it shouldn't have, it shouldn't cause a problem, but it does, so I just want to kind of put it out there.
okay. Well, thank you. And
Thank you.
yeah, we have some great tools that we can point you to at the end. So thanks. So let's walk through a typical written assignment. You've been assigned a one-page paper where you have to find two articles on the civil rights movement, and you have to write a summary of that paper, and you have to cite your sources in APA format. So that's kind of a typical written assignment. And so what do you do? First, you'll probably go to, hopefully, the online library and search and find two articles that interest you. You'll go back and read those thoroughly, take notes, maybe highlight them, but then, this is the important thing, turn that paper over so you're not looking at it, and then write your summary. This kind of protects you from something we call copywriting, which means you don't intentionally mean to write word for word from the document, but sometimes you do, and sometimes that creeps into your paper. So it's better to just, make notes on the key points and then write your own summary. Then you create a full reference for that resource that you will include on your references page. And then from that, you can back into the in-text citation that you will actually use in the text of your paper. So we will start walking through that step by step. So we'll start with references. Okay, first of all, and to the question earlier, the references list is always its own page at the end of the paper. You'll notice that the word references is typed and centered at the very top of the page, and because that's the title, it's bolded. Again, the page number, and in this example, is page 7. So this was a 5-page paper where page 1 was the title page and page 7 is the references list. So that's what it looks like. You'll see that entries are alphabetized by the first word in the reference. So most often that is the author. And notice there's this funky kind of formatting where the reference starts flush on the left margin, and if there's additional information that follows onto another line, that is indented. We call that a hanging indent. The other thing to remember is that if you have an in-text citation in the text of your paper, you must have a reference in your references list. Likewise, if you have a source listed on your references list, there must be an in-text citation in the text of your paper. So they sort of work hand in hand. If you have one, you have to have the other. Okay, so let's look at how references are formatted. First of all, there's an actual pattern. There are 4 elements: the author segment, the date segment, the title segment, and then the source information. So very simply, the author is who created the work. Sometimes that's a person, sometimes that's an organization. The date is when it was published or when it was posted on a website. The title is what the thing is called. It could be a title of a book, title of an article, title of a web page. And then the source is information about where you can get it, where you can access it, because a lot of times our readers want to know where we found our information. Okay, we're going to run very quickly through 3 typical source types. First is an ebook. So in the left, on the left, upper left, there's an image of a book out of our collection. And again, we're going to search for those 3 elements. First is the author, which is in purple. It's Maria Luisa Aliada is the name of the author. But if you look at the example below of the reference, you'll notice that we only use the author's last name, comma, and initials. If there's a PhD, MD, RN, we don't include those titles, just last name, first initial, and middle initial if it's available. The next segment is the year of publication. So in this case, this book was published on April 3rd, 2018, but we just put 2018 in parentheses, period. So that's the date segment. The title segment is the title, in this case, of the book, Mastering Academic Writing in the Sciences, a step-by-step guide. Notice that we don't capitalize every major word in the title. In APA, we use what we call sentence capitalization, like you would write a sentence. So only the first letter of the title is capitalized. Everything else is lowercase unless there's a proper noun. But this particular book has a subtitle, so we use a colon, and then we capitalize the beginning of the subtitle. So the A is capitalized, step-by-step guide. Now we get into the source information, and this is where it can be a little bit different for the resource type. So in APA 7th, we include the name of the publisher. So this particular book was published by Taylor and Francis. And then we include, because we found this in our online library, we include what we call the permalink to this book. So this is a link that anybody using your references list could click on and access that source. So let's look at a journal article. So again, we have an image of the beginning of a journal article sort of provided in the upper left, and then we have the reference kind of color-coded beneath. In this case, we have 4 authors. So again, notice that we have the last name first with initials. Each name is separated with a comma, but before the last name, there is an ampersand or an and symbol. So we always use an ampersand just before the last author's name. The date in this case is 2017. But here's what the title in this case is the title of the article. So profiling writers, analysis of writing dynamics among college students is the title of the article. Again, we use that sentence capitalization. But the source material segment gets a little bit more complicated with a journal article. So the beginning of the source information is the title of the journal itself, which in this case is Megacognition Learning. But journals, if you're familiar with them, every year they publish a new volume and then they number the issues within that volume. So we include the volume number, which is 12, and then in parentheses 2, which represents the issue of that year, and then we put the page range or what pages that article appeared on, period. And then we end this reference with something we call the DOI number. And this is something you'll see in the academic literature. This is a unique URL that will get you to this article. And in APA, if a DOI number exists, you have to include it in your reference. If it's not available, and you found this in one of our library databases, you would use the permalink. So again, the idea is we want to connect our readers with the sources that we used. And then finally, let's look at a web page. And web pages, sometimes you have to be a little bit of a detective. So again, we have an example, a screenshot of a web page, changing the citation conversation. And in this case, an actual person wrote this blog post. And sometimes on web pages, you might have an organization like Cleveland Clinic or something like that. But in this case, we actually have a person who wrote this article. It's gold, comma A. Now here the date's a little bit different because we don't have a book and we don't have a journal where something is precisely published in a volume and issue. We have to provide the full date because this is kind of a standalone blog post. So it's 2018, comma, November 25th, again in parentheses, period. We provide the title of the article using that sentence capitalization. And it's in italics, but then we also name the website. So this came from a website called Inside Higher Ed. They're kind of the publisher, if you will, of that web article. So it's similar to the book. And then we finish with the precise link to that web article. And then to wrap it all up, we put it on our references list. Notice we have references centered at the top in bold We have the page number. It's the last page of our paper. It's number 6 in this case. And then we have those 3 resources in alphabetical order by the first word in that reference. I know that's a lot to digest, but I am going to turn it over to Sarah now to talk about in-text citations.
Absolutely. Thank you, Suzanne. Jamie had a quick question. Some of the articles their instructor sent them does not list an author. And how do you cite that? You know, that is a great question. And we have some information on our APA guide. If you go to our references, the reference APA guide references page, there is a whole tab about how to cite something if your source does not have some piece of information, whether that's an author, a date, if you can't figure out what the title is, and those sorts of things. So that is a great question, Jamie. All right, so in-text citations. These are the citations that go in the body of your paper. They give credit to the resource that you took the information from. Again, whether that is a direct quotation, so word for word, a summary of what an author is trying to express, or a main idea, or a paraphrase. Additionally, you will use an in-text citation for any images or specific data that you are providing within the body of your paper. So what this in-text citation does is it informs your reader that they can locate more information about this source, this idea, this data in the references list. And if they are so inclined, they can then follow that reference in the references list out to the original source where you got your information from. So really it's giving credit to the author who came up with the data, or the source where you are getting your data from. Next page, please. All right, so let's talk about the difference between quotations and paraphrases. Paraphrases and summaries are when you are putting original material into your own words. You're not using quotation marks. Your paraphrase or summary in text citation will include the author's last name and the date the source was published. So we have an example here of author date. So Smith, 2018. That is our author of our source, and the date that they published was 2018. Now, if you're using a quotation, so if you're using Smith's words word for word, you are doing something identical to the original. You will use quotation marks. So you will surround that sentence or sentences with quotation marks, and your in-text citation will have the author's last name, the date the source was published, and the page or paragraph number. So again, we've got Smith 2018, page 5, because we can find that direct quote on page 5 of that article. Now, we also sometimes will include paragraph number. That is for if you are getting citing a direct quote from a website. Say you have to scroll down a bit and there aren't necessarily page numbers on a website. And so maybe your direct quotation is coming from paragraph 12. Or maybe it's coming from paragraph 1. You want to give your reader kind of a general idea of where within that article, whether it be on the web or in a book or in a journal, where they can find that direct quotation. All right, so citing a paraphrase or summary. So even if you are not taking a direct quote from your source, you do still need to include an in-text citation with that author date format. There are kind of two different ways that you can do an in-text citation for a paraphrase or a summary. You can include that information in a parenthetical citation at the very end of your sentence. So for our first example here, it is important for researchers to carefully review sources because some may contain unreliable information. This is a summary or a paraphrase from an article by Berkman that was published in 2014. We've got our closing parentheses, and then we have our period here at the end. The other way you can do your citation is to include that citation in as part of your sentence. So you start the sentence off with Berkman, and then you've got your parentheses date, closing parentheses, reported that it is important for researchers to carefully review sources because some may contain unreliable information. So it's nice to be able to change this up within the body of your paper. It helps your paper read a little more fluently, the flow goes a little bit better if you're not ending every citation or every sentence with a citation. So that is something to take into consideration. There are, so then we'll talk about direct quotations. So we again have these two different types of in-text citations for a quotation. Again, we start with our opening quote to tell our reader this is a direct quote from this source. We've got our closing quote. Then we have our opening parenthesis, our author, date, and page number, closing parenthesis, and then the period. If you wanted to integrate that author date within the body or within the sentence that you are quoting, you can say, according to your author, 2014, comma, then you've got your opening quote. So you've got your quotation here, our closing quote, and then our page number at the end, followed by that period. When you're citing direct quotations, you want to remember to always keep the author and date together. Those should never be separated. So you should never say, according to Berkman, we must remain vigilant, blah, 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 and then have 2014, comma, page 3. Nope, that author and date always has to stay together. The page number should always be next to the quotation mark, okay? So whether it's with the author and date and next to a quotation mark, or whether it's by itself next to a quotation mark, it needs to be next to the direct quote itself. Great. So in-text citations for 3 or more authors. With 1 or 2 authors, you want to make sure you're including both of the author's last names in every citation. So Nelson and Smith, or 2020, or Nelson and Smith 2020 paragraph 5. If you have 3 or more authors, you're going to include only the name of the last name of the first author plus et al. In every citation. So you'll have your first author's last name et al, comma, year. So for example, here we've got Johnson et al. 2019. This just kind of helps keep your citations a little bit shorter within the body of your paper, so you're not having to read through a list of, maybe 15 authors before you get to the next sentence in a paragraph. All right, so let's do a quick check here. Which choice below is an example of a correct APA style in-text citation that would fall at the end of a direct quote? Let's see some letters in the chat here. A, B, C, or D? Thaddeus and Jacqueline both say C. Stacy says C. Look at you guys paying attention. Awesome. I love it. Jamie says, see, you all are correct. You've got your author, comma, your date, comma, your page number, all within your parentheses and ending with that period because it is a direct quote. Nicely done. Excellent. All right. So as we're kind of getting to the end here, just remember that there are 3 basic APA elements. There is the formatting of your paper, so how it appears on the page, your references list, which has your full reference for every source that you cite within the text of your paper, and your in-text citations, which all relate back to a full reference on that references page. Right? Those are kind of your 3 basic APA elements that you need to make sure you're paying attention to. So let's talk for a minute about NoodleTools. NoodleTools is a citation generator that Rasmussen subscribes to that you can use to create your references pages. You can find it via the library resources link in the books and tools menu in your online class. And NoodleTools is great because you can basically plug in your sources information in a really easy way. It'll ask you what's your author's name. And you type that in, and it'll ask you, okay, what's the date this was published, or what's the title of the document, and is this a book? Is it an article? And what it'll do is it'll essentially create your reference in APA format for you, which is fantastic. And it will compile all of the entries that you enter in there into a references page that's automatically alphabetized, automatically formatted properly, that you can then export and then copy and paste into your Word document where you've written your paper. It's fantastic. I love NoodleTools. It's great. And it looks like Suzanne has posted a link to our NoodleTools guide that has a series of videos, 6 short videos on from how to sign up for NoodleTools to how to create, basic references, and walks you through step by step all of that information. So I highly recommend using NoodleTools. Where do you go if you need more help? I mean, APA, kind of a big deal, kind of a huge topic. I always recommend that students start with our APA 7th edition guide. It's got the vast majority of the information that you're going to need about APA for everything from setting up your paper to in-text citations, references, annotated bibliographies. It's got all sorts of helpful tips and tricks in there. APA Academic Writer is also a great source. This is from the APA folks themselves who created the APA style. So our APA Academic Writer has little tutorials, it's got examples, it's got references, it's got, you can write your paper within there as well if you so choose. It's a little more advanced, but it's really helpful. We talked a little bit about NoodleTools as a citation style generator. We do have an FAQ here. You can connect with a tutor who is very proficient in APA. They were specially trained by the librarians here and can help you with figuring out your citing your sources and making sure that you've got all your references formatted correctly. You can submit papers to the online writing lab for feedback on both your APA formatting as well as grammar, spelling, that sort of thing, which can be also really helpful. And then don't forget library chat. Librarians are available from 12 p.m. Central to 8 p.m. Central Time, Monday through Thursday, and from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Central Time on Sunday evenings. So if you have questions about APA, or how do I cite this image, or I have a website and I can't figure out who the author is, we would be more than happy to help you out with any questions that you might have about APA or doing research during our chat hours. Again, I can't stress enough, our APA guide has so much information. You can use the APA guide again through books and tools in your online courses. You click on library resources, it'll take you to our online library homepage. You can click on APA here or under research tools in the menu there, or you can just bookmark it in your browsers. You'll probably go to it more than once. So when you go to it the first time, bookmark it, save it as a favorite. I use our APA guide all the time. I love it. I absolutely love it. All right, so that kind of wraps up our session for today. We would love to hear your feedback. How did Suzanne and I do? Let us know. Suzanne will put the link to our evaluation in the chat here, but we would love to know, what did we do well? What didn't we do well? What would you like to hear more of? And if this was great information and you want to know more, next week we are also running an APA Advanced webinar. So if you want to build on this information, you can go ahead and go to the webinar calendar and sign up for that APA Advanced webinar and learn a little bit more than what we covered here. if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. There will, again, this recording will be on our APA or on our Library and Learning Services webinar series page. And we want to thank you so much for coming and attending today. And yes, please let us know if you have any questions. Suzanne and I will hang out for a couple of minutes here, but we appreciate you coming and joining us today.
Yes, and thank you all. Feel free to ask any questions. I hope we answered everything in the chat. I tried to keep up with it. But if you could take a moment and fill out that survey, we sure would appreciate it. And best of luck and reach out with your questions. We're here to help you. And just remember, APA takes a little bit of practice. Don't be afraid. Just jump in there and practice. Oh, Thaddeus, do you have a question?
Yes, I was wondering, is there a way that I can set my micro Microsoft Word to default APA papers?
Oh,
That's
that's
a
a good
great question.
question. Um, the only advice I have is on the home page of the APA guide, you can download and save a copy of the pre-formatted APA paper. And then, save that in your files, and then you can pull that up every time you need to write something in the APA style. Sarah, maybe you have a better idea.
Yeah, no, that's what I was gonna say. Is use the template. Because you can kind of save each individual paper, you'll rename it, but you'll always have that template to come back to and start from again. But yeah, no, that's the shorthand way that I am aware of.
All right, thank you.
You are
And y'all
welcome.
have a wonderful day.
You
You
too.
too.
Thanks for coming.
You're welcome, and I appreciate it, the information.
Thanks all.
All right, Suzanne, you want to stop the recording?